If we are live on Grounded. It says we're live. Let's see what this says here. Hello, everybody. Yeah, we're live. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Grounded, my Q&A live stream podcast. I am here with Omar, and we're going to do a quick intro for you, and then he's going to introduce himself. So thank you so much. We're going to be talking about Tesla, full self-driving, and whatever else the community wants to talk about. So in this new series I'm doing Q&As with kind of the people you request, and Omar was one of the first requested people, and he was nice enough to come join us on the stream today. So today is June 1st, 2023. For anybody listening on the podcast, you can listen to this in the future on whatever podcasting service that you want. I am streaming via Starlink, so if you have any little hiccups here or there, it should be okay. My connection looks good, but that's why. And please give me any feedback on the audio. Is audio sounding okay for you? Because didn't get a huge test. It looks like everybody in the chat is happy and doing good. So Omar, thank you so much again for joining us.
Yeah, happy to.
It's a lot. I know you just were flying all over the world, and then you weren't feeling good, and you were just at a movie. Like you walked in the door 5 minutes ago, and now you're on here with us. So why don't you give us a quick intro about yourself, whatever you want to tell us for the viewers, and we'll start. I got some questions I want to ask you, and then we'll start taking it from the people.
Yeah, so I'm Omar, Mars on Twitter. And, I've always just been really interested in self-driving. I think I first got interested in Tesla, just trying Mobileye Autopilot 1 on my dad's car. And I was just totally blown away, even back then in, 2014 or something, with just how useful it was just for, staying in the lane. And I've been, following Tesla ever since. I got a Model 3 in 2018. And, I've been using Autopilot. In October 2020, I was, I think, one of the first 200 people outside of Tesla to get FSD Beta. So I've been using it since the beginning. And I remember then I told them to add you too. I was like, hey, he's in Michigan. Like, you could probably get some good data from this guy. I think Karpathy watches his videos. Because he had put you in that little slide or something. Yeah. So, you and we've been testing beta for, coming up on 3 years now. So it's definitely incredible just how much it's evolved over those 2.5 years. And, there's amazing progress happening. I mean, I just got an email from Cruise that they're expanding their driverless service area. They're going to be starting at 9 p.m. now instead of 10 p.m. So things are happening. This isn't just science fiction anymore. And just AI in general, right? You were just telling me about how you're using this AI software that makes my eyes look like it's looking at the camera. And right. So many other things, the chat GPT craze, and really just so much AI hype taking over the market. But, there is a lot really there. There's a lot of really incredible things happening with technology. So, yeah, just sort of covering that, because it seems like a lot of people in the media kind of ignore it or cover it from a certain slant. But a lot of people aren't really acknowledging the fact that after years of rolling our eyes that, driverless cars are never coming, there's now actual real driverless cars on streets. There's hundreds of thousands of people using FSD Beta. This is not just something to roll your eyes at anymore. This is something that's actually growing really fast.
Yeah. No, I totally hold on. Sorry, I'm getting some echo.
I got some AirPods. I could try putting them on.
Sure, yeah, give it. Let me mute you. Is that okay? Yeah, that's what it is. Thank you. Yeah. I was like, what? How is that happening? Because that wasn't happening to us before. Okay, so that should be better. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I totally agree. And the number one thing I love about FSD Beta is the implementation. They did it right in terms of safety. And that was always everybody's kind of the thing they freak out about is, oh, it's not safe, it does dangerous things and blah, blah, blah. And the whole time I'm saying, okay, then where's the danger? Where are the accidents? Nothing's going wrong. Everybody's complaining about this, but there's no accidents that you're seeing. And you'll see, you'll see Cruise and Waymo have little tiny accidents. I mean, it's still incredibly impressive, but then you can look and say like, hey, I haven't seen FSD Beta in this situation. And it's like, well, it's not, fully autonomous. Yeah, well, the way Tesla has gone about this was incredibly smart to have a person there to take over for those times where it messes up, and look at all the, millions of miles of data they can collect. Um, it's really impressive. I wanted to ask, so I don't know, this thing is distracting me. I do want to tell everyone what you mentioned. I have a AI thing on my computer, makes my eyes like make eye contact with the camera. So if it's like, look at this. If it's distracting, please tell me in the chat. I'll turn it off. So one thing I want to ask you, do you mind talking a little bit about your relationship with Elon Musk? Because obviously on Twitter, so your Twitter account is massive. I mean, what are you at, 300,000 followers or something now? And
Yeah, something like that. I don't know.
yeah, it's yeah. Twitter's hard for me to keep track of. But you have a ton of followers on Twitter. You do YouTube videos as well. But you guys are like always interacting in some way, and it's such a cool thing to have like this, And he seems to interact with a lot of different people. This big powerful guy who's super rich and making all these amazing life changing technologies, but he's also just like, yeah, you're totally right, Omar, or responding to you all the time.
Yeah, I mean, he does talk to a lot of people on Twitter. It's kind of funny. Some people think I'm like his best friend or something. I wish I was his best friend, but we're not really. I mean, we just sort of, it's it's kind of a long story, but there was obviously in 2018 like a short and distort attack on Tesla where people were really going after them, trying to say, the company wasn't going to make it, try and kind of make it a self-fulfilling prophecy, sow doubt in the company so that things do fall apart. And that's when I got my Model 3 and I started tweeting about it. And so these guys were going after him. I was pushing back against them. They started going after me. And, then Bloomberg was interviewing me for this story on autopilot. And that was the first time I'd like emailed Elon. I found his email on like Twitter somewhere. One of the shorts were like leaking some info.
Oh, okay.
And so I just emailed him, and this Bloomberg reporter, the story was actually like autopilot may kill you, right? But they obviously didn't tell me that at the time. They're like, we want to interview somebody. And Zach Miter, the reporter, he was like really great, really fair. I think he did a good job with the story and sharing my experience. But he's like, hey, we're trying to get Elon to comment on this. So I emailed him. I'm like, hey, I'm doing this story. And he's like, be careful. These journalists will just sort of say one thing and then just do a complete other thing, and you'll be completely surprised. So that was like, an interesting piece of advice he gave me that I think was, really important, and that maybe I was a little more naive of at that time. So it's kind of crazy. It was like, wow, Elon Musk just emailed me. But, so then a lot of stuff happened. We interviewed him at one point in 2020, went to his house, or one of his houses that he had at the time. That was Gene Wilder's house. And, we did that third row Tesla interview with him. And then like a year after that, one of the short sellers like sued me and him in court. And he was making all these claims like I was, being paid by Elon and, all this stuff. So, that went on for like years. This guy was like totally nuts. But then the judge finally dismissed the suit. Now it's in the appeals court, but it's mostly like calmed down. So that's kind of how we got to know each other a little bit. But, a lot of people see this guy on the internet, right? He's like a cartoon character in many ways to people, right? He's not like a real person. He's like an idea. And,
right. Yep.
There's people who just love him beyond reason and people who hate him beyond reason. And, there's like this constant flame war. But he really is an actual person, and you sit down with him and he's kind of just like any other programmer dude that you might meet, except he happens to be the richest man on earth and controlling these companies that are just, revolutionizing multiple industries. I mean, we're talking about FSD, we're talking over Starlink, right? I mean, he's an incredibly accomplished person, of course, but, I just have to emphasize, like, I've seen a side of him that is honestly really, like, he's got a good heart. He's compassionate. It may not always seem like that to everybody, but, he cares about things, he cares about people, and it's not just an act or something, you know, and that's just, I think, something, the side of him that I've seen, right? Like, he doesn't need to talk to all these people or worry about these people's issues, but he does, you know, it's what keeps him going. And yeah, I think he's a good guy.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And a lot of the problems I think people have is, like you said, cartoon character. Like it's just like he's not real, so you can kind of just assume a lot of things about him. But at the same time, is it seems, especially on the internet, there's no nuance in anything. You're either A or B. There's no in between. It's impossible to have anything in between A and B. And if you kind of think about both, you're like, everybody hates you rather
Yeah,
than like everyone agrees with you, right? Or can see your
right.
point. So yeah, no, I totally agree with that. Um, oh, sorry, I had one here. I wanted to ask you, what do you think about? Do you think Project Highland is real? There's some people saying it's not real. So from Whitaker, it says Highland features. What do y'all think? So do you think it's real? And then what do you think is coming with that on the Model 3?
Well, I mean, it certainly seems like there's something going on, right? We've seen the pictures. We've seen something on the test track covered up, unless this is some elaborate hoax to stop Model 3 sales or something. It seems plausible that, 5 years in, they do an update. And we've seen a revolution really in the Model Y construction. It's moved to these large structural castings. But the Model 3 is actually made with the old process just because it would have been more work to tear it down and put up a new line. Better to just keep it going.
Right.
And that was the lifeblood of the company. That's how they were generating cash. But now Model Y is the bestseller. That's generating a ton of cash. It makes sense to, I think, upgrade the Model 3, move to the large castings, maybe make some upgrades to the exterior, the interior. And, it's looking like maybe it could come as early as next quarter. I'm not really sure. I assume you'd see, hardware 4 in there and some of the nice upgrades from the S and X and maybe even some stuff they designed for the Cybertruck. So, we'll see. I don't really know anything that anybody else doesn't know.
Right, of
Tesla's really
course.
been clamping down on leaks, right? And
Yes, they have. Oh my goodness.
yeah, yeah. So I think they've got some secrets they're cooking, and I'm ready to be surprised by like everybody else. But I really have no clue other than just bringing it up to speed with the Model Y changes in a way, and maybe giving it an update.
Right, for sure. So we have, I don't know if you saw that 11.4.2 is now rolling out to more people as of like 15 minutes ago or something.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, very cool. They decided to widen the rollout. I know you've had a good experience. So it's almost a meme, you've had a good experience with like X update, right? And it's funny because like I just said, people are like so black and white about everything, but I have definitely seen you complain about beta, of course, when it does bad things because we know it still makes mistakes. So do you want to talk a little bit? Do you have any roundabouts around? Like, are those a thing in California really, or?
We don't have many roundabouts. I got
Okay,
a couple of small ones in San Francisco, but
right.
roundabouts are not really something we deal with. So, we in California do have this sort of bias of the team is here. So things that are common in California get maybe an unfair amount of focus.
Sure.
But then again, we do also have more customers here. But
We have the more Teslas that are
yeah,
basically gathering all of that data all the time, which when we were at AI Day 2, right, we saw in that presentation how they're like making those maps with just the cars driving around. I mean, it was incredible to see that. So when you have more Teslas around, it makes sense it's going to perform a little better.
yeah. And so, I think it's funny. I'm definitely an optimist about the whole program for sure. And maybe it comes from my software background or I think it's everybody just sort of has a different perspective. If you come into it expecting that it's just going to be a perfect autonomous car, obviously that doesn't
Right.
exist,
I
right?
agree.
Or there'd be self-driving cars all over the place, right? So, like coming into it from my perspective, it was really like it seems impossible to drive a car safely with just cameras and just 1.2 megapixel cameras. So that's kind of where I came into it in 2018, right? And seeing what they've been able to do with FSD Beta, it's like watching someone turn water into wine for me as a software developer. It's like, holy shit. Is it perfect? No. But they really have, I think, blown away my expectations. And you got some people here who just walked in and they're saying, hey, this wine's a little bit bitter. I don't like the taste. Right? And you're like,
Yeah.
hey, okay, maybe you're right. Maybe it is a little bitter. But they just turned water into wine. And they're
Yeah, I
like,
hear what you're
I don't
saying.
know, I don't like it. And I'm just complaining because I'm trying to help it make it better. You're not being honest about how bad the wine is. And it's like, look, the wine's going to get better. Your feedback's important. Tell them it's bitter. But at the same time, this is incredible. I mean, the first version of the software we got could barely drive straight. This version of the
I remember that.
software,
It used to, in the first updates, it used to do
yeah,
this on a straight road the whole time.
yeah.
I
I remember,
remember.
I remember emailing the autopilot team like, "Hey, this thing can't really drive straight as well as the old one." So people are like telling me
So
about
fun.
their little updates. They're like, "Oh, it picked the wrong lane." It's like, yeah, it picked the wrong lane. You want to know what kind of shit I saw in the beginning? It tried to run into a school bus or something like that. That didn't actually happen, but just
I hear what you're saying.
just
Yeah.
like crazy jerk and just do some thing, where it would really like give you a heart attack if you're not crazy.
That's what I find so funny about. I don't even want to mention the guy's name, but the O Clown man. That's what I find so funny about his whole campaign now is if this dude would have been doing that in the beginning, he would have had such good clips. He would have had a much better point back then. I mean, it would have been something that was actually, in my opinion, he could have been arguing and it would have made sense because the car was way wilder back then. It would like break all over the place. It would take, and for me, like I have it all in videos. It's all there. So like people can go back to those videos from 2.5 years ago and see the car doing these things. But it was still like, if you're paying attention, it's not going to do anything. You don't let it. But it was
Yeah,
wild back then. So yeah,
right.
I agree. It's a huge part of perspective. Like if you go into it thinking, hey, I just got a perfect self-driving car I can sleep in,
Yeah,
it's going to be a huge disappointment. But if
of
you go in
course.
with this kind of sense of wonder of like,
Yeah,
man, this tech is cool. I didn't think this would be possible in my
yeah.
lifetime. You're going to be blown away, in
Yeah,
my
or if you
opinion.
just come in as an autopilot user and you're like, "Hey, this is a huge upgrade."
Right.
And they're going to keep updating it and the question you just brought up mentioned phantom braking's a lot worse. I've kind of noticed that with every new update, they seem to turn up the margin of caution through some like remote configuration or something. And then they sort of narrow it down over time so that, it's doing less and less of that. So I like to say you got to let the update marinate a little bit. Let it wait a couple weeks. Like
It does seem that
11.36,
way.
yeah, 11.36 was well, actually 11.31 was amazing for me. Then like 11.32, like those four updates, it got really bad. And then 11.36, it was still pretty bad. But then somewhere like a couple weeks in, it just really started nailing every drive for me. So I think as 11.42 kind of marinates, you're probably going to see a lot of these users across the country start to say, "Hey, this is actually getting a lot smoother for me."
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a possibility. But as they bring in the new stuff too, then you have new mistakes it makes. And it's kind
Yeah.
of this expected, let's say yeah, I don't know. I don't want to get too into it, but all right, I have some good questions for you here. So Omar, what do you think should be the next priority for the FSD Beta team? Asks Tim. It's a great question.
Well, I mean, that's the $1 million question. I'm sure they have the answer much better than we do because they're
Sure,
getting the
but
data
from
back.
from your experience, what you're letting your car drive around, what you experience on the daily, what are you like? Man, I really wish they would either fix this or make this smoother, or what do you think?
Well,
I'm gonna turn
I
off
mean,
my AI for my eyes, so you guys know.
I think I think they've done a great job prioritizing, but in terms of something that just annoys me, I think they need to use the vision speed network to make sure they're not slowing down falsely. They've added this thing where it now says limiting speed for road type, where if you're in a narrow road, they go, okay, we're going to limit the speed because this is a narrow road. Similarly, they need to use that same neural network to detect a really wide road like a highway and to not slow down because,
Mm,
over at my parents' house, they've got this, they live on this hill and there's a speed limit sign that says speed limit 45, truck speed limit 25, right? And so it's literally for 3 years. It's just been a problem. Like it works 50% of the time. And 50% of the time it's like slowing down to half the speed on a downhill.
Because
And you
it's
just
reading
gotta,
that 25.
right.
Got it.
And you just got to slide the wheel up really fast to sort of work around it. But
Right.
you know, obviously they could get better at reading the truck thing on the top of the speed limit sign, and I think they'll do that. But, we have common sense, right? A human doesn't look at a sign that says speed limit 25 on a road where everyone's going 50 and go, "Okay, better slow down to 25." They go, "Look at
Right.
the cars around me, look at the road." Even if I didn't read that part that said truck, I'm still going to know in my mind that it doesn't make sense. So FSD Beta needs to develop the same sort of common sense, but honestly, I'm really encouraged by some of what's happening in AI. Like if you saw that GPT-4 demo where they
Mhm.
said, "Hey, what's weird about this picture?" And GPT-4 said,
Oh,
"Oh, there's
yes.
there's a guy tied to the back of a car ironing, and that's strange because people don't do that." So, you know, FSD Beta is very much just sort of like, perceiving things. But I think what's really been missing is that common sense, that understanding. So I'm really excited about some of the stuff that's happening in the forefront of AI. Like we never imagined software would be able to understand something like that. Like, hey, that's weird that somebody's attached to a car. But I think in the future, FSD Beta will be able to sort of understand those things and reason and figure out what the right thing to do is in sort of a remarkably human way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. It needs like more intelligence, and to kind of add to that, it almost like for me it needs some type of memory factor. So what I've noticed, one thing that makes me really, really appreciate beta, if because people get used to what they have, right? If you took this
Yeah.
car back 100 years, like people would fall over dead from shock seeing this thing drive
Right.
around. But when you're used to it, you're like, oh, it's making a mistake again. But what's really made me appreciate beta is if you ever try to drive in a new area you've never driven in before, especially at night, but even not at night, it's a lot harder to do than your daily commute to the office or whatever. You go slower, you might brake more than you need to, you might not actually go the speed limit, you might miss a turn because you're not familiar with the area, and a lot of times that feels like how beta is driving. It's kind of like the first time it's ever been there if it doesn't have great map data. So I think that perspective kind of helps a lot.
Yeah.
And so if it had some type of memory ability, I don't know how to code or do any of that, so that's kind of the limit of my knowledge. It could remember things like that, like, oh, I know he changes the scroll wheel every time here, so I'm not going to slow down, something like that.
Right.
So from this one, sorry, let me see this question.
Yeah, you make a good point.
Yeah,
The
go ahead.
software is incredible, but it's so primitive compared to what it will be in the future. There's so
Right.
many basic things that are missing that will be added.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the other thing, like you said, we've been at it for 2.5 years, and it is dramatically better. Like maybe every update, you don't see much of a
Yeah.
change, but when you look back a year or 2 years, the change is dramatic. So, who cares if it
Yeah.
takes another 1 or 2 years? Like think 5 years from now, it's just
Right.
the whole world is going to be so different. We won't even like, you won't even know if we're real on this screen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
all right.
it's like
So,
a
mhm.
hedonic adaptation, right? People will be complaining even after Robotaxi, right? They'll be complaining, the damn Robotaxi braked too hard. I spilt my coffee, piece of shit, right?
Yep, for
People will
sure.
always find something to complain about because you get something and it's good, and then you get used to it. Then you're not impressed anymore. It has to keep getting better for people to be impressed, right?
Right. For sure. So we have this question from Yamin. Today, very few people think Tesla will achieve FSD with vision alone. What's it going to take for people in general and investors specifically to believe in full self-driving? So do you have any opinions on that?
Well, you
Have
got
any
to see
idea?
it. Seeing is believing, right? And
Right.
a very significant moment just happened. It kind of happened under the radar, but after 2.5 years of limited beta, of safety score, of hey, you got to do the secret handshake and hit the button and subscribe to the thing. It was very much like something that just spread through word of mouth. Now it's actually launched where you can just buy a Tesla, hit the subscribe button, and they'll actually send you the software. And more than that, they've actually merged it into the main branch. So this is literally what we've been working for since the day we started testing almost 3 years ago, is for ordinary people just to be able to buy this, at least in North America. And so people will use it, they'll start showing their friends, and people are going to buy Tesla stock, a lot of them, when they see it, I think.
Yeah.
Because, you really do have to see it to believe it. It's like kind of funny. I record these videos, but even still, people don't seem to get it. They don't seem to absorb it the same way that when you show it to them, when they see it in real life, something clicks. Like, oh, this isn't scary. This is actually feels completely normal.
Right. Yeah, it's a totally, I always try to tell people in the videos, it's a totally different experience like when you're actually in the car. Even, I mean, I don't know how much you've been a passenger in a beta car, but even being the passenger is a totally different experience to being in the driver's seat, because you have all these little things, and a lot, for me, I don't want to speak for anyone else, but for me personally, I've kind of caught myself a lot of the times where I'm maybe complaining about beta, or it still makes a lot of mistakes, don't get me wrong, but things I think it's doing wrong or whatever. It's just my personal preference. So
Yeah.
one really specific example is when a green light pops up, Beta responds to it pretty quickly. But I thought for a long time, like, man, I wish the takeoff was a little better. We're going a little slow here. But what I started to notice is Beta leaves the start line before the people next to me pretty much every time, and it accelerates faster than them. So I kind of had this realization of like, okay, maybe I just take off really fast at green lights. Maybe it doesn't need to go any faster. It's doing a great job. It's just my personal preference. So, I gave some drives, over a year ago now, when Beta was like super, super limited access. And yeah, it was blowing minds all over the place, even with the mistakes and everything. People were like, what the heck? I can't believe it just made a right turn. This is unbelievable. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, this is sort of the interesting thing. I call it like front seat driving, right?
Mhm.
Like, 'cause, like, there's backseat driving, like someone else is driving the car, and you got all these, like, no one ever drives exactly how you want
Definitely.
to
Correct.
drive. So, like, it's like a thing. People have opinions about, like, oh, what are you doing, this or that. So it's kind of the same thing with beta. And people don't realize that, like, what a disengagement is completely subjective. Like, some people say, how come they're not releasing the data of, like, what's the disengagements per mile or whatever? And who decides what's a disengagement? Everybody has a different standard for what's a disengagement. Somebody might disengage just because they're afraid, even though it's like a mile away. They might disengage just because they're being courteous to somebody else. They feel nervous, they feel embarrassed. Somebody else might not do that. I remember when we were driving to AI Day, and we're just in my car, and it can't get into the left turn lane, so it just
To be
sort of
specific, Omar gave me a ride to AI Day.
Yeah,
So he
right,
was
right.
using Beta. I was a passenger.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm giving you a ride, and I'm like, okay, so I'll show you how good it is in California. And so, so then the left turn lane was like filled with cars, so it couldn't get into the left turn lane. Now it's much better at this, by the way. But it couldn't get into the left turn lane, so it just went straight and then just waited for the traffic to clear on the other side and then just made a left turn. So Chris was like, what the fuck? Like, why did you let it do that? But I'm just kind of like,
Yes, I was.
see, I mean, I kind of like drive pretty crazy myself. So, like, I would honestly do that kind of thing sometimes if I was like really in a hurry or something like that. It was obviously not legal. But again, it just goes to show that, like, technically, you should disengage to avoid breaking the law. But if you just want to go on what's safety critical, it technically waited for the cars on the other side to go.
Oh, there was no risk of collision or anything. It was just like technically the wrong
Right.
thing to do.
Yeah, so that should have been a disengagement, but I was just kind of like, okay, whatever. I'm just going to let it go. But it's obviously, kind of a subjective thing, what you want to consider a disengagement and what you don't. So a lot of people are really letting their own, like, they're correcting and disengaging, which is the correct thing to do for something that may not necessarily be wrong. But again, they want to be polite to somebody, or it's going too slow or whatever. And I think that's part of also why some people have different opinions. Somebody might consider it amazing just if it can get from point A to point B without a crash, while someone else might expect that It should also be comfortable. It should be fast. Nobody should honk at you when they're behind you at a four-way stop, all this stuff, right? So the spectrum of good is wide. You know, there's safe and then there's actually good.
Right. Yeah, I had just a couple, my last FSD video, I think, I don't know, very recently, where it was 11.4.2, where there was a pedestrian in the crosswalk and we took a left turn. And legally in Michigan, if the pedestrian is in the crosswalk anywhere, you have to wait for them, even if they're like way on the other side of the street. And Beta went for it because it was nowhere near the person. So although it was legally wrong, it was perfectly safe. We weren't anywhere near that human. And I was surprised at the comments I got, because usually I get lit up in the comments whenever I let the car do something wrong. But I'm like, you guys don't want to watch me drive. You want to watch the car drive. I'm not going to put anyone in danger. But I was surprised at the comments. They were all saying, hey, that was a good move. You're wrong. You shouldn't say that was wrong. And people were saying how, like, in their state, the law is the pedestrian has to be at least one lane away. And this pedestrian was, I think, 3 lanes of traffic away from us. And so everyone was like, no, that was a great, that was a great move. I'm glad to see the car do that. So, that surprised me, but it's exactly what you're saying is, it's all very subjective. I have kind of a funny one for you. Why do many spouses refuse to allow FSD enabled? What do you think about this? It's kind of a mystery for me too.
I mean, honestly, it's a lot less fun being a passenger on FSD Beta than being a driver. When you're a driver, you can at least grab the wheel, right? You're in control. Mm-hmm. When you're a passenger, you're like, is this the last car ride of my life? So, I've had the situation too. We've all have like the friend or the significant other who's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, turn this shit off and just drive yourself. Like, why do we have to use this piece of shit? So that's been a thing since the beginning. The wife test, people call it, right? But to be fair, we're hearing more and more reports of Beta starting to pass the wife test. Your mileage may vary depending on where you are and other factors. But a lot of people are saying, hey, my wife actually likes it when I'm using it. Some people saying, hey, my wife actually finds it more comfortable than when I'm driving. And some people actually saying, yeah, my wife is actually using it herself now. So, my dad, my dad has said that my mom is telling him now, put the Beta on. It's at least staying in the lanes and stopping, unlike you.
That's funny.
And it's always been a thing between me and them ever since I was like 16, where they shout at me when I'm driving, like, what the hell are you doing? You're going so fast, like, calm down. Now I put the Beta on, no fights. Everybody's happy.
That's right. Awesome.
So I think it is going to pass the wife test more and more. It's starting to happen. So, just give your wife time. I think she'll get there. Maybe
sure.
I'll take another update or two.
Yeah, I'll put that up there real quick just because it's funny. So yeah, in the last drive I did with my wife, she actually did find it comfortable. It was the first time. And if you look at the last drive she did, because we just, with 2 kids and, me working full time and everything, it's hard for us to find a time where we can go. Right. And like, of course we could bring the kids, but they're going to be loud and we just want to, me and her go. So it's long stretches of time in between her experiencing Beta. And if you look at the last video from, I don't know, 6 months ago or whatever, she was, doing this. I'm like, what? Did you stop? Blah, blah, blah. And the drive from a few days ago, there was one scary moment. It got kind of close to a dumpster that was in the road. Why is a dumpster in the middle of the road? I don't know. But the car went around it. It got a little close and it freaked her out. But besides that, she was like, I'm actually pretty relaxed here. This is not bad. Yeah. And I was blown away. I did not expect it at all. Because in the past, she's been so kind of sensitive to that. So I have... I actually like this question a lot. I don't know if you have an opinion on this or not. I'm happy we can provide feedback. I love I don't know if you're using the voice notes, but I love those. I use them any chance I get. Do you think there should be some instructions as to limit the responses so they can consolidate? And then I'll put this up because it's related. I believe it's related. What would Omar say? People who are frustrated because of their disengagements and interventions, are they kind of messing up the system? Sorry, I misread that. Are frustrated and intervene, give an edge case, hoping that FSD will learn, but it just doesn't. It does the same mistake with every update. So those are kind of related to interventions and disengagements. And then again, sorry, let me just reiterate the voice notes. Do you think there should be some like instructions on what we're doing? Or what do you think of that feature? Because I can't imagine they're listening to all of them, but go ahead.
Well, I don't think a lot of people realize that there's a lot of people doing manual labor to make FSD happen, right?
Okay.
So a lot of people are like, hey, why can't they just give me FSD? It doesn't cost anything. There's a team of people who are getting back data from your shitty drives and drawing boxes around things. Okay, now they got the auto labeler, but they're saying this and that. So basically the voice notes are transcribed into text and they're categorized automatically with AI, right? So they can figure out all the different ways people say stop sign issue or red light issue or whatever. And a lot of it can get automatically categorized. So they don't need to really have anything too intensive. They can read your voice. And then in terms of like actually reviewing it, there's people who then review the things and find different things or different themes and then point that to the team and augment their data sets to get it to work. So I don't think we need to worry too much about structuring it. The way the industry is going is really towards software that's so powerful that it can understand us, right? So
Right.
just, put emotion into it, right? If you've got an issue that you're really frustrated with, don't just say issue with stop sign. Say, come on, guys, this is fucking killing me. You gotta fix this shit.
Well,
Okay?
yeah, I've started to incorporate what I believe would be keywords. Maybe things that would be flagged a little higher on the list if it's appropriate. So I have a thing, actually hasn't happened in a while, but where I've seen going towards a roundabout, the car just screws up roundabouts in every way you can think possible. And one of the ways for a long time it's been screwing them up is when there's vehicles in the roundabout, sometimes it'll try to go. And I'm experienced with this stuff. I'm not like making it up. It's like there's a car right here and it's trying to drive into it.
Yeah, I've seen that kind of thing before.
Yeah, exactly. So
It happens less now, but yeah.
I haven't seen it for a while, but it's something I've seen with the voice notes.
Yeah.
And I left a voice note that said we were going to crash into a car in the roundabout because I'm thinking, hey, like we weren't, but if I put the word crash in there, maybe that will, bring it up. I don't know.
I mean, that is a critical thing, yeah. And those critical things are getting rarer and rarer, so it's important to, sort of filter those out. Those are the highest priority, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so wow, sorry, there's lots of chat. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, so
and
then Yaman was talking about somebody who had the same disengagement over and over. I would just tell people like drive your car manually sometimes, Like there's certain areas where it's not going to work. It doesn't work every single time.
Sure.
I'm not necessarily like, all right, maybe it'll get it this time. Like you got a Tesla. You got one of the most fun cars to drive in the world. Just take the wheel, do it yourself. I promise you, eventually they'll fix it. I've been doing this for years. They fix a lot of things in time. It doesn't happen quickly. They can't just always fix it instantly. But, it's sort of the ultimate first world problem. Like, my self-driving car is like picking the wrong lane. It's like, yeah, there's going to be a lot of problems. It's, the beta program. It's not fully autonomous yet. But ultimately, you're one of the first million people to have a self-driving car that you can keep in your garage in history. Nobody else in the world has this, right? So we're very lucky to be one of the first, but we're also one of the guinea pigs. But, I definitely have this thing where I'm like testing it so much. I forget to just enjoy my Tesla, right? Like,
Yeah.
don't use it for more than 80% of the time. Like, go take the wheel and drive it yourself and have fun. And in those frustrating spots, you don't have to put on beta and be frustrated. Just take the wheel, do it yourself, and put it back on and, give it a shot every time there's a new update or whatever. And you'll probably be surprised one day that, wow, it just does it perfectly now. I've had that happen so many times, and it's a great thing where it's just messing up on that spot every single time that you do on your daily drive over and over and over. And then one day it's just like, boom, it works.
Yeah, and then to add on to that, another thing I've caught myself doing is you then end up forgetting about those spots that got fixed. Because I have this left turn that's on my way to work that I take 5 days a week, if not more than that. And it would screw up this left turn every single time. This was very, very early in beta, like the first couple months or something. And then they fixed it. It was like a double left turn with 2 lanes, and it just always would be So I would always do it. And then one day it just started working, and it's worked ever since. And I didn't think about that for a really long time until I was doing like a review video on kind of like, 2 years of beta or whatever. I'm like, oh my gosh, this left turn used to be like the scariest thing
Yeah.
ever, and now it does it every time I don't even think about it.
Yeah, I remember on the on the two left turn lanes, it would have a huge problem with like trying to hit the other left turn lane, right? Like it
Yep.
wouldn't be able to make like a clean pass through. It was like the most stressful thing ever. And now it just nails it almost every time.
Right. How is your experience with potholes? Man, your roads over there are friggin' pristine. I could not believe that when I was in San Francisco. I was like, oh my gosh, these roads look like,
Really? You think our roads are good? Well,
oh
okay,
my gosh,
Palo
they
Alto is
look
a
like they
different
were
story.
where I was and where you drove me and
Yeah.
stuff. It was like
Okay,
somebody
Silicon
painted
Valley,
roads
yeah.
onto the earth. Oh my gosh. Whereas
Yeah.
around here, our
Okay,
roads are
yeah,
tore up.
The South Bay has great roads. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
San Francisco's a
Um,
different story though.
So for me, I'll answer this one first real quick. Potholes, my car doesn't seem to see them. I think like
Yeah.
maybe a couple times it's moved away, but you never know if it's a fluke when it's so rare. And then
Yeah.
speed
It
bumps are
doesn't
also
respond to that.
okay. Yeah, so you agree there. Speed bumps
Mm.
are also really hit or miss for me. They actually used
Mhm.
to be way better back in the day, and I can't
Mm.
remember the cutoff. But do you remember when they added the speed bump graphic? When they
Yeah.
added that, it had a little graph, and they seem to work very well. Like every speed bump I would come across, like little ones and huge ones, it responded to all of them. Now I don't know what changed, but they're really hit or. It seems like they never really went back to that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I have the same experience. It responds to most of my speed bumps, but not all. Sometimes it doesn't slow down. Potholes, it definitely doesn't respond to. And, a lot of people are sort of confused by this. You just have to take over and avoid them yourself for now.
Right. Yeah.
And
No, I hear
they
you.
could they could they could add the detection, but here's the complicated part of it is the computer vision system is never just 100% accurate like we are. It has false positives and false negatives.
We are
So
not
if you make
100% accurate.
yeah, well, we're not accurate either, but computer vision's like,
Definitely.
a different story. It's
I hear you.
much worse than us in some cases. So, yeah. So like, this if for example, you had a really good speed bump detector that was catching all the speed bumps, you'd also catch some things that aren't speed bumps. And then you'd be driving along the road and you'd be at, 50 miles an hour and suddenly slowing down to like 15 and you'd be like, "What the hell?" right? Then someone's complaining like, "Oh, it's phantom braking," right? So like the FSD code's like this big ball of spaghetti, right? And somebody's like, "Hey, can you just pull this noodle over here?" But pulling this speed bump noodle and making it better then sort of pulls creates phantom braking over here. And similarly with potholes, you could probably avoid a lot of potholes, but you'd probably also detect a lot of things that were just road markings or something and just be swerving
Or
like crazy
shadows.
across the road. So,
Right.
they're going to add these things, of course, but it needs to be really, really, really good at seeing everything that's a pothole and nothing that's not a pothole.
So
So,
to
simple
follow
to
up
us
on that,
humans. Yeah.
no, well, I was just gonna say because you have you do coding and stuff, like that's your
Mhm.
job. Is that
Yeah.
okay? So I
Right.
know
Yeah.
that's how little I know, like coding and stuff. So
Yeah.
what's your opinion? I want to ask before I move on to. I
Mhm.
have a doubter here. I want to give the doubters some
Mhm.
airtime too. What's your thoughts on the HD radar? I know it's like this whole thing. I put out
Mhm.
some wrong information, which I then corrected. The SNX with hardware 4 are coming with radar. It's not on, doesn't seem to be being used right now. What is your opinion on radar? Is it coming back? And like, in what areas would it help that, like, why would they be putting it back, in your opinion, if you have one?
Well, it seems like maybe a good source of training data, right? So, okay, so you got this pure vision system, but where do you get the labels for the pure vision system, right? So my car and your car can look with the camera and say, okay, that pole is 10 feet away. But it really needs to be sure that it's 10 feet away and not 5 feet away or 15 feet away to be able to control accurately. So where do you get that training data? A human can't really label it, right? I can show you an image and I can say, hey, draw a box
Oh,
around all the
sure.
stop signs. And a human labeler can do that. But I show you the pole and say, how far away is that? You're going to show 10 people and get 10 different answers, right?
Right.
So what they've had to do, and people have probably seen this on social media, is they have the cars with the LiDAR and the radar driving around.
Yep.
And then they're
Yep.
using
Yep.
that to train the occupancy network and all those sort of pseudo LiDAR vision networks. But obviously that has limitations in that Tesla can only cover so much distance. They're only going to, really cover the Bay Area, for example. So, they're going to be more biased to certain areas where they operate as opposed to like rural Montana or whatever, which is probably getting less coverage. So, any sort of features that are specific to rural Montana might not be picked up as well. But if you actually put an HD radar in the car and start measuring these things, then you can potentially get some really good ground truth data from the fleet that evens out a lot of those edge cases. And it could actually make the vision cars that don't have a radar potentially drive a lot better. So I think that's one of the main motivations. It sounds like it's not going to be in the 3 and Y, maybe based on rumors. I mean, it's hard to know with these rumors, right?
Right.
So maybe it's only on SNX, maybe not on 3 and Y. I don't know. We'll have to see. I'm personally really excited to hear more about hardware 4 from Tesla and what
It's
changes
so
they made and why.
they give us
Yeah.
a lot of fun with like all our speculating because they won't tell us anything. But it's just so funny to me that they just like upgraded all the S and X and people are just like taking delivery,
Yeah.
but they said nothing. They said nothing.
Right.
Because did Elon
Right.
respond
Yeah.
to you at AI Day 2? Didn't you yell something to him about hardware 4 when he was on the stage?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, I know.
after
I
the
came up. I came up after when he was like taking pictures with like Ellie and
right.
stuff, and
Yeah.
I was like, "Hey, Elon, what about hardware 4?" And he said, "Oh, if I told you, I'd have to kill you." And
Yeah, exactly.
they've just silently introduced it in the whole lineup. Now the S, the X, the Y have it. So we're only missing the 3, and presumably that's about to be updated. So they're about to, it's kind of crazy when you think about the fact that they're now shipping 4680 structural pack cars. They're now shipping hardware 4 across the lineup, and FSD Beta has been launched, right? We kind of
Right.
follow the stuff day to day, but these major initiatives that they've been working on for years are finally starting to launch, and it's pretty crazy. I'm really
Right.
excited to hear more about the new computer, the new hardware. The cameras seem to have this red glow. They've actually removed a camera. I think that's the
Yep.
funniest thing. Everyone's like, oh, they got to add a camera here, they got to add a camera there. It'd be great if they added a camera in the bumper, in the mirror. And Tesla's like, fuck you guys. We're actually going to remove a camera. You better shut
That's
your
so
mouth or we
funny.
might remove another one, you know? So
Yeah,
it's,
and I've been one of them saying the same thing
yeah.
of again, I emphasize I am no expert. This is from a consumer standpoint, a personal
Mm,
experience standpoint. I do think that we still kind of need a side facing camera. I have some, and it's, like, again, over 90% of my driving is done with beta. I have interventions here and there. They're not as big of a deal as they used to be, but I have some scenarios where I'm like, how the heck are they going to do this exact maneuver? And like, sure, maybe they could take a different route or
mhm.
something. But it's just, it's in my head. I'm like, oh, I think that would be good. So I want to, it's kind of related to what we're talking about. I'll put this up here. Kevin is being, he's saying, because FSD, it won't work as FSD in any Tesla driving on the road today. Do you want to respond to that?
Well, yeah, I don't think it really matters as much as people think. They're going to make the existing cars as good as they can possibly make them. So if there's a limit to how good it can be, we're going to go find that limit. We're going to go push up right against that limit. And my guess is it's probably actually a lot higher than people think. And even if you can't make the car autonomous, making it super safe, understanding the world, able to, take control itself if the driver passes out, avoid a crash even in manual mode. These are super, super
Yep.
important things to do. And you're not stuck with the hardware forever. I mean, these cars are designed to be super upgradable. I don't think people realize the cameras pop right off. So if they
Mm-hmm.
come up with a better
I've done it
camera, a better
myself.
angle, yeah, you just pop it on, pop it right off. The computer's upgradable. They have Oh wow. Yeah, there you
This is
go.
my old
You got
broken
the
one that I replaced myself.
Yeah, there you have it. It's super easy to do. They thought about all this. They said, okay, we're going to tell people that it's got the hardware for autonomy. Yeah, the cameras pop right off, the computer pops right off. They've chosen not to do a hardware 4 to hardware 3 upgrade just because it would be a lot of work. But they've done upgrades before from 2.5 to 3. If it turned out, for example, that the computer wasn't powerful enough, and that was all that was remaining to turn this thing into a robo taxi that could generate, tens of thousands of dollars a year in income,
Right.
then they'll just develop a computer upgrade. So I don't think it really matters at the end of the day. Like, none of us are keeping a car until the end of time, really. We might keep it for a long time, but there's always going to be hardware upgrades developed. People are going to get a new car. It's really just about moving up the average safety on the road, making the fleet as safe as possible. And they'll always have opportunities to iterate on the hardware, on the software. And anyone who thinks autonomy isn't happening, they've got their eyes closed, because major progress is being made. I mean, in San Francisco, it's becoming completely common to see driverless cars at all hours of the day.
Right.
There's so many people using FSD Beta. The progress is real. People are into it. They're using it, right? What would bother me is not hearing, complaints are good because it shows that people are using it. What would scare me is if nobody was complaining, because nobody, they just given up on it. But people are liking it. They're using it and they want it to improve. And I think people are going to be really surprised by what Hardware 3 is capable of. Here in Los Angeles, I've had it do on this update an hour long drive where I didn't touch anything.
Yeah.
So people said this was impossible. Oh, it'll never be able to do a drive without you touching anything. My car is already doing it in some cases now.
Right.
Obviously, the thing is to be reliable to do it every time, but seeing is believing. Once you see your car drive an hour without you touching anything, I think it's much easier to believe that it could potentially be autonomous. I don't know if it's a sure thing, but I think the probability is much higher than most people would expect. And yeah.
Well, nothing is a sure thing, because if it was, it'd be done, right? So it's not guaranteed. And anyone that says it's guaranteed, I mean, they're talking out of their butt, because it's just not. But what do you think from now? I'm not a lawyer. Are you a lawyer?
No.
Okay. So from a legal standpoint, what is your, what do you think? Like, let's say there comes a day, I can't imagine this ever happening, but there comes a day Tesla releases a statement and they're like, apologies, you'll never be able to sleep in the back seat while your car drives you to work. Okay. Just, imagine that happens. From a legal standpoint, do you think then Tesla's going to have to refund everyone's FSD? Or are they going to have to give them a discount on a new car? What do you think would happen in that case? I have some ideas, but I'm curious what you think.
Well, no, Tesla doesn't have any legal obligation to do anything. If you look at the website, it says...
Oh, people are going to be mad at that one. But keep going.
If you look at the website, it says, here's the features plus auto steer on city streets. The only time Elon really mentioned robotaxi was really in investor presentations, talking about what the end goal of the product is, right?
Yeah.
From a revenue recognition perspective, this is pretty much what they're recognizing is just FSD as an ADAS. So from a legal perspective, they're definitely not obligated to do anything. Does that mean people aren't going to sue them? Of course not. People are going to sue them all the time. People file lawsuits every day. There have been tons of lawsuits about autopilot already. That doesn't really matter at the end of the day. They've got 1 million.
Oh, are you? Can you hear me? I'm losing you. Oh, hold on. Your mic is not connected, it says. I don't know if you can hear me. You can reconnect your mic. I don't know. It says can't unmute your guest. Oh, there you go. All good. I hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, my AirPod died. But
okay, cool.
I was just saying, they have 1 million different lawsuits going on. So in terms of the law, that's not really what I'm worried about. It's more just about customer relationship, right? So I think if they couldn't achieve driverless on hardware 3, just give everyone free FSD on their next car or whatever, right? Or give them some supercharging miles or something. It's probably a lot easier to placate people than they think, right? People complain, but if autonomy is actually achieved, which I think it will be across the industry, then everyone's ultimately going to be happy, I think.
Yeah. My two just real quick opinions on that are, number one, I kind of agree. The description on the website says auto steer on city streets. So what does that mean? You know what I mean? It means whatever Tesla wants it to mean, so they can kind of scapegoat on that. And then the other one is exactly what you said. Just give them free FSD or just a refund. If you paid 10,000 or 15,000 or whatever FSD, you get the money back. And of course that would suck, but that's what it would be. So I kind of want to move on from that because it gets way over my head. But yeah, I don't know. I don't see that happening. I think somebody said in the comments, I lost it, but they'll just keep working on it, which of course they will. That's how it's going to be.
Yeah.
So let me get through. I have a couple more. You got a few more minutes? How you doing on time?
Yeah, I can go for a
Okay.
few more minutes.
Cool. All right. Yeah, I usually go for about an hour. So we have, let's say we got 5 more minutes or so. I have a few questions lined up. I like this one from Tim. What features are you hoping for with FSD Beta 12? I always find this kind of question really hard to answer, but do you have things you're looking for?
Well, at this point, I'm just waiting for them to just finish the last step, which is
Which is,
actually smart summon and reverse summon,
yeah, that's
right?
mine too. Yeah.
Because it kills me that I can only say FSD Beta handled almost all of my driving. I just had to park
Yep.
because it maybe drove for like 3 hours, 6 hours without takeover, but I still had to do that little piece manually, right? So that kind of irritates me. I can't wait until, first of all, some smart summon, people literally like their jaw is on the floor when they see smart summon being used in a parking lot, but it's just so bad, right? It's just based on this old stack that's just terrible. Moving into the FSD beta stack, it's going to be incredible, right? We can see how FSD beta works in parking lots. It's going to be a dramatic upgrade. And have it being able to go and seek a parking spot and park itself, you could literally go entire days potentially without touching anything, where you just have it pull out of the parking spot with summon, drive you where you want to go park, pull it out again, no need to touch the controls ever, right? So
Right.
just that, maybe you could call it like actually finally feature complete to get that last step in. So, it's probably a lower priority than getting the highway stack safe out, but I'm really excited for them to ship that.
Right. Yeah, no, I totally agree. You need that beginning and end of drive. Beginning of drive is kind of there. Actually, it's at the point where like, my driveway is just gravel. It's 150 feet of gravel and it actually curves and it's like surrounded by trees. And I'm at the point, not that I would really put this in a video, but I can start it in my driveway and it'll drive away. I mean, it'll drive me all the way to
Yeah.
work from there, with a few interventions from, some things that are messed up with 11.4, but it'll attempt to do the whole thing. And it will pull into my parking lot, which it didn't used to do. So it just
Yeah,
needs to be
love
able to get
that.
to, yeah, it needs to be able to get to a parking spot. So I'm really close
It's
to that.
got auto park. It's got the ability to drive into the parking lot.
Yep.
All it needs to do is just go drive a little, find the little P, and then park. But it's going to come up with some ridiculous parking spot ideas like, oh, wow, the, sewer hole or whatever. This looks like a parking spot. So
Yeah.
probably want to be a little careful with that feature for, the first beta. But like everything else, I'm sure they'll get it there.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. I'm going to finish up here. I'm going to answer this one real quick. If you want to chime in, you can, but I like to answer this one all the time. So Tesla already does this to an extent. So if you go to Europe, the car navigate on autopilot in Europe will act 100% differently than it does in the US, and other countries as well. So Tesla is ready to do that. And especially with, the advancements in AI and all that, I don't think that this is really a problem we need to worry about. They can easily follow, same as local state rules. So that's not a big deal.
Yeah,
Real
that's the
quick,
easy
Brenton.
part.
Yeah, I agree. That's pretty easy. Brenton's been asking this for a while. Does FSD use real world weather tracking and traffic stats to avoid getting stuck in traffic and evade floods, rainstorms, and longer drives? I think, I don't know about weather, but definitely traffic data.
Yeah, so I mean, the map is just the map. So FSD beta, and actually, I think they need to have a deeper integration of the mapping into the stack. But right now, it's kind of just like you got the mapping
Yeah.
stack here running on your MCU, and you got the autopilot stack, and the mapping stack is saying, hey, make a left turn up ahead in zero point 0.2 miles. And then the FSD beta stack is acting on that. So it'll obviously do rerouting for traffic. I don't know if it does weather tracking, but basically just whatever's in the navigation system.
Yeah.
And this can obviously be upgraded over time with software updates to
Sure.
reflect, weather, floods, hurricanes, whatever else they want
Mhm.
to augment it with in the future.
And they do use weather data for battery
Right.
estimates. So that's just one thing away. All right, last question I'm gonna put up here for you. We got to end it with Cybertruck. When are we getting Cybertruck? What are your thoughts about Cybertruck? And make sure before you guys leave while he's answering this, you follow Omar on Holmar's blog on Twitter and YouTube. Make sure you follow all his socials. He's pretty set there, but give me your Cybertruck thoughts. I'm very excited.
Yeah, so they're saying they're going to do it in September. So, they're always a little late on everything. So let's call it Q4, maybe October, right? I mean, if they can just deliver the first units, and they'll probably deliver them to like employees and stuff at first. But if
Yeah.
they can deliver the first units by the end of the year, that's going to be massively exciting, right?
Oh,
And
that's happening. Yeah, that's happening
this
for
thing's
sure.
going to have hardware 4. It's spacious. It's going to be incredible. It's going to change a lot of people's perceptions about what an EV is and what it can achieve. So I'm really excited. I think we'll probably get one. I have a reservation, so
Yeah, for
let's see
sure.
it.
Yeah, I think they're going to get I think September is achievable. It's definitely coming this year. There will be a delivery event,
I mean,
and
they're definitely setting up a production line.
yes, they are. And I also agree they're going to give, just like the 4680 Model Ys, they are going to be giving to employees first for sure.
Yeah.
I just hope that doesn't follow the same thing where they tell us nothing about it and deliver it to employees, but whatever. Okay, cool. So thank you so much, Omar. I will give you back your free time. I really appreciate your time here. Maybe you can come back sometime because a lot of people enjoyed this. And there's millions of questions we did not answer, but I had a great time. I hope you did as well.
Yeah, definitely. Happy to come on anytime. And last thing, I'll give a shout out to
Yes.
my sponsor this week on Home Mars, which is Jowa,
Mhm.
Jowua.
Yeah.
Use my code HOMARS. They're trying to break their sales record. So go check out their stuff.
Okay.
They
I'm
got some
gonna.
cool accessories.
I'll add to that because it's funny because they actually did send me some products like a while ago, and their products are sick. I love them, but I just never really had time to review them, and I felt so bad because they just sent them out and they were like, "Yeah, if you can do it." I planned on it, but I just never made the video, so I feel really bad about that. But
Well, there you go. Go make the video.
yeah, I'm working on it. Their accessories are very nice. I use actually several of them daily. So,
Yeah,
all
they got
right,
some cool stuff.
yeah,
All right,
cool.
take care, man. I'll see you on
Thank you
Twitter.
so much. Yes, thank you. Good to see you. Thank you, everybody, and I hope you enjoyed this one. You can find it. You can stay or you can leave if you want. I don't care. Whatever you want to do. Just a little outro. You can find this on any of your podcasting apps that you want to listen to it in your car or whatever, and give me some feedback on that as well. So thank you, everybody. I hope you all have a good night.
Good night.
Bye.